Next up in our ACC preview is the California Golden Bears. And Dalton, last year, they kind of got back on track, making their first bowl game in 4 years, trying to repeat that this upcoming season as they join the ACC. And really, Dalton, if they're going to do that, it's going to be on the back of their star running back in Jaydn.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's one of our top 10 running backs in the country. And for a team that lost its top receiver and has a real quarterback competition going on between Fernando Mendoza and Chandler Rogers, you've got Ott as the one constant in this offense, even with a less than ideal offensive line in front of him. But he's going to be the engine of their success.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the less than ideal offensive line. That is probably their biggest weakness right now, and it's kind of been amazing that Ott has been so successful in his career behind that offensive line, because last year the Golden Bears were among the 25 worst teams in the country in terms of pass blocking and run blocking grade, and also they lost 2 starters from that offensive line as well. So again, Jaydn has been fantastic, but it's really been in spite of the offensive line when so many running backs succeed because of the offensive line. But Dalton, tell me a little bit more about his quarterback in Fernando Mendoza. When you studied his tape, what'd you see?
Yes, so Cal had kind of a rotating thing with their quarterbacks last season with some injuries and some lack of performance and things like that. But Mendoza got off to a hot start, especially in a high-scoring game against USC that I believe they lost 50-49. But kind of a classic, wiry, lanky pocket quarterback who can throw well down the middle of the field when he makes quick decisions. The big thing with Mendoza is you don't get a whole lot of extra tools outside of a reasonably strong arm, right? He doesn't move much. He doesn't get past his first read very often. So there are some flaws here. And kind of, I think, with that lack of pass protection and a lack of athletic ability, he really has to be highly, highly functional on his first read and early in plays, or he can struggle. Now, he's got Chandler Rogers breathing down his neck. And honestly, I have a feeling we're going to see both of these guys throughout the season unless Mendoza gets off to another hot start.
Yeah, I like Rodgers a lot, and I'm actually, Mendoza is a projected starter, which is why he broke him down, but I even think Rodgers might be a better quarterback than him, so I'm really interested to see how that battle plays out throughout the season. But obviously the offensive player spotlight is a guy we already talked about before a little bit, is Jaydn. He's been dominant over his first 2 years of college football. Over the last 2 years, he has 1,394 yards after contact and 108 forced missed tackles. That is third among returning Power 5 backs. Also 2,201 rushing yards over those 2 years, which is fourth among returning Power 5 running backs. And also really capable receiver out of the backfield as well. 517 receiving yards over the last 2 years, which is sixth among Power 5 running backs as well. So breakaway speed, 6 feet tall, 200 pounds. If you give him a crease, man, he is gone. And he has been, like I said, a really productive player for Cal over the last 2 years, the engine of that offense over the last 2 years. And he's going to be that engine again as one of the 5 best running backs in the country and as Cal makes their way into the ACC.
He certainly is. Ott's the engine of the offense, but they need to find some stars on this defense. And the one guy who maybe is that on their defensive line is their 6'6", 275-pound edge player, Xavier Carlton. He was tied for the 8th most pressures in the Power 5 last season, and he had the 5th most run stops among Pac-12 edge defenders. He's one of the better pass rushers coming into the ACC. He gives them a good foundation in their front 7. Again, Cal gave up way, way too many points last season, but Carlton's the guy off of the edge who could lead the charge for them and get some improvement going. And they're not playing as many high-flying offenses as they did in the Pac-12 last year. So Carlton's a guy who could help their D-line a lot while they figure out things on the back end.
Yeah, definitely. So, Dalton, Cal made their first bowl game in 4 years this past season. As they move into the ACC, are you expecting another bowl game for the Golden Bears, or do you think they're going to miss out this year?
There's a lot of variables, and I think they can still hover around that 6-7 win mark, but they need some things to go right. They've got to get the ambiguity out of this quarterback situation first. Second, they have to get better on defense. And one of the things I'm most curious about, especially for Cal and Stanford and even the West Coast teams that we've talked about before in the Big Ten, is how do these long road trips affect all of these teams, right? When you're talking about, even games that you think Cal would win against, Pitt or Wake Forest, those are cross-country trips they have to make. Now, works the other way around, too, when they're hosting an NC State, when they're hosting a Syracuse, right? I'm curious how the West Coast trips, or the East Coast trips, too, for them, I should say, how that kind of jet lag effect really hinders them. We've seen it in the NFL, cross-country trips, teams just don't play as well. I'm curious how that now affects the college game where, Cal going all the way to a Pittsburgh, right, even especially if it's for a day game. We think Cal's better than Pitt, but are they better with a 6-hour flight and jet lag and all these different things when they're already a flawed team as it is. So I certainly think a bowl game is a possibility, but I think there's some outside factors that could really affect those chances. But internally, it starts with the quarterback battle and them just finding any sort of clarity with it, whether it is Mendoza or Rogers.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's a great point by you. And it's them and Stanford, right? They're joining the ACC now. And that is a huge deal, right? Because that jet lag is terrible, man. I could tell you firsthand experience that, when you're on a plane for a long time, it is brutal. My brother and sister were actually on a plane for way too long these past couple of days, and they came to me very tired as well. So it does affect you a lot. But yeah, man, it's when you're doing those trips, man, especially student athletes too. I mean, these aren't like professional, like NFL, it does affect them too, but they're professional football players. These are student athletes at the end of the day, too. So yeah, I think, around 5 or 6 wins is probably expected for Cal, and I think it's going to be come down to the wire whether or not they do make a bowl game. But I think they have the talent offensively with Jaydn not leading the way, and say Chandler Rogers takes over later on in the season, then I'd be really a lot higher on this team right now. But it is going to come down to the wire, and I think right now 5 or 6 wins is probably what should be expected out of the Golden Bears this year. But that's what we got for our preview of the California Golden Bears. Hey, thanks for watching the PFF College Football Show. Before I let you go, though, we have an unbelievable deal for you guys right now. If you use the code CFB25, you get 25% off your PFF Plus annual subscription. We've got the 2024 College Football Preview Guide that you can find over at pff.com, featuring the best players in the country from all 70 Power 5 teams, plus 10 Group of 5 teams that have the best chance at making the college football playoff as well. You can also gain access to NCAA premium stats for historical games, teams, and player tracking dating all the way back to 2014, so the last decade or so of college football. All the stats you can hope for, you can find in PFF Premium as well. Also, you can be the GM of your favorite NFL team with our unbelievable mock draft simulator where you can draft up to 7 rounds of players for your NFL team. And if you want to dominate your fantasy league, you can do that as well using the best fantasy tools on the planet. All of that and more with your PFF Plus annual subscription, which you can find for 25% off right now with the code you can find in the description. Or if you want to go to subscribe.pff.com and use the code CFB25 at checkout. Again, you get 25% off your PFF Plus subscription. This won't last forever, so make sure you take advantage of it right now.